At 32, I was living an ordinary life, stuck in a routine defined by a dull office job at a large corporation. My days were spent in a cramped cubicle, surrounded by an endless sea of spreadsheets and business jargon. Lunchtime was a solitary affair, always the same, a lackluster salad eaten while my eyes flickered between the screen and the ticking clock. My dating life, non-existent. I didn't stand out, blending in with the background, from my colorless wardrobe to my equally uninspiring personality. Then one day, my cubicle neighbor Margo spun her chair toward me, a mischievous glint in her eye. Margo was everything I wasn't: bold, vibrant, and never without a story or a laugh. She leaned in and whispered, "There's a guy who's interested in you." I blinked, startled. "What? Who?" I stammered. Margo grinned. "He's been noticing you at our favorite little cafe. You go there every week, right?" I felt a rush of disbelief. Someone had actually seen me there, of all places, during my little escape to sip overpriced coffee and dream about fictional romances. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Margo shrugged. "He's a little shy, but he's been watching. Don't worry, he's not a creep." The following Friday, I was anxious, almost to the point of obsession. My heart raced as I sat at the corner table, scanning the cafe. Then, in walked a tall man with messy black hair and an easy confidence about him. Our eyes met, and he walked straight toward me, a smirk on his lips that soon softened into a real smile. "Hey," I mumbled, my voice cracking. "Hey there," he replied, his warmth disarming. "You're the girl from the corner table, right? I see you here all the time." We spoke for a few minutes before he asked if I wanted to grab coffee somewhere else. Nervously excited, I agreed. The next day, he took me to a record store downtown, filled with vinyl treasures of all kinds. His name was Elias, and as we wandered the aisles, he handed me a Miles Davis record. "This one's a masterpiece," he said, his eyes lighting up.
I wasn't much of a jazz fan,
but I listened intently as he explained the music. Margo had been right. There was a spark between us, one that couldn't be denied. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about everything, from obscure music trivia to our guilty pleasure 80s movie quotes. By the time we parted ways, there was no denying it. I had found someone who saw me, not just the beige version of me I had settled into, but the person beneath it all. A few months later, Elias surprised me with a dinner date. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when he knelt before me with a beautiful diamond necklace, and I found myself tearfully accepting his proposal. "Marry me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Let's paint our lives with every color imaginable." Our life together seemed to unfold as easily as that, simple, joyful, and full of unexpected turns. We were soon planning our wedding, a small, intimate ceremony where I felt more radiant than I ever had. My father, typically reserved, proudly walked me down the aisle, his chest puffed with pride. My dress was simple yet elegant, reflecting the confidence I had found within myself. That evening, I posted a photo with a caption, "Happily Ever After Begins." Married life was a dream, romantic getaways, cozy nights in, and everything in between. But then came a shift. Elias suggested we move in with his parents to help them out. It felt like a big step, one that came with its own set of challenges, but I trusted Elias and agreed. Things were going well. At first, Elias and I settled in, and his parents, Bailey and Lincoln, welcomed us with open arms. Their kindness made it easy to feel like family, even though I was still adjusting. Then, one Sunday dinner, the conversation took an unexpected turn. They spoke of the house's deteriorating condition, a roof held together by patches and a slew of other issues. "We'll take care of it," Elias reassured, but the worry in my stomach grew. Bailey, tears in her eyes, admitted they had taken out a large loan to fix the house, and now, it was due. The weight of their financial strain hit me like a ton of bricks. They were on the verge of losing the house, and I could see how much it hurt them. Later that night, I suggested we use some of our savings to help. Elias's face lit up with relief. We decided to pitch in for the renovations, determined to fix up the house for his parents.
The following months were a blur of contractors and paint samples,
as we worked together to make their home livable again. 7 months later, we had transformed the house, new appliances, a leak-free roof, and a fresh coat of paint. Bailey and Lincoln couldn't stop thanking us, their gratitude overwhelming. Then, at the celebration party, Bailey broke down in tears. I rushed to her side, heart sinking. "What's wrong?" I asked. She clutched my hand, her eyes full of fear. We might lose the house. Honey, she whispered, after all the work you've done, we could lose it. My stomach churned. Why? What happened? Bailey's voice trembled as she explained. They had taken out a huge loan, $350,000, and it was due in 3 months. The gravity of the situation hit me like a cold wave. They were in deep financial trouble, and now it seemed like they were turning to me for help. I felt a wave of anger and frustration, but seeing Bailey so distressed softened my resolve. I'm sorry, Bailey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but I don't have that kind of money. I just can't. Just then, Elias and Lincoln entered the room, their faces sheepish. Elias hesitated before speaking. There might be something you can do, he said. Your dad's pretty successful, right? Maybe you could ask him for a loan. The suggestion left me reeling. It felt manipulative, yet Bailey's tear-streaked face made it hard to say no. I agreed to speak to my father, though I made no promises. The next day, I called my dad. He listened carefully, then paused before responding. I'll lend you the money, but it has to be a formal loan, a signed receipt, so I can reclaim it if necessary. I relayed the terms to Elias, feeling a mixture of relief and guilt. As we prepared for the next chapter, I couldn't help but wonder how much more of this life I could handle. The reluctance in Elias's eyes was evident when I mentioned the receipt, but necessity won out, and he finally agreed. With my father's help, the $350,000 debt was cleared, and Bailey and Lincoln showered me with gratitude, treating me like a hero. Yet,
despite the sense of relief that came with resolving the financial crisis,
a lingering resentment began to brew inside me, a bitterness that festered further when my father unexpectedly passed away from a heart attack. The days that followed were shrouded in grief, funeral arrangements, and condolences that felt as hollow as the absence of his presence in my life.
Emotionally drained from the funeral preparations,
I arrived early at my in-laws' house one afternoon. The front door creaked open, and I heard muffled voices coming from the living room. Bailey, Lincoln, and Elias were speaking, and although I hesitated, guilt pulling me back, curiosity pushed me forward. I lingered near the doorway, straining to hear. Can you believe it? Lincoln's voice was thick with satisfaction. $350,000, and we're practically free of debt, thanks to her old man. Bailey's laughter followed, but it was cold. Stupid girl.
She never suspected a thing.
My stomach churned. Those words, sharp and calculating, were a betrayal I hadn't seen coming, but what came next was even worse. Can we talk about something else? Elias's voice was laced with irritation. Living with her is killing me. She's disgusting, Bailey chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. Something like that, Elias replied, his voice growing heavier. I've got someone else, someone younger, someone hotter than Genesis. The room seemed to spin as the words hit me. Not only had they lied about the money, but Elias had also been unfaithful. Their deception was deeper than I'd ever imagined. My heart raced, and just when I thought I couldn't hear any more, I caught something even more chilling. Patience.
Lincoln's voice held a warning.
It's not the time yet, those damn receipts. The conversation hung heavy in the air, and Elias's next words were venomous, colder than the rest. I'll steal them, he hissed. Sneak into her dad's house and get rid of them. Problem solved. The anger within me flared like wildfire, but I forced myself to remain silent, taking in every word. My resolve hardened. I knew I had to act quickly. With a deep breath, I slammed the front door open, letting it crash against the frame, signaling my return. Bailey appeared, her face painted with concern that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, honey, you're back early. How did everything go with the funeral? She asked, feigning sympathy. Going well, I replied, my voice thick with emotion, but beneath the sorrow, a surge of fury was simmering inside. Elias muttered something about helping clear out my dad's house, while his parents exchanged sly, victorious glances. They had no idea that everything had changed.
The funeral that followed was a blur of forced politeness and hollow pleasantries.
Back at their house afterward,
the facade of concern quickly faded. Elias, who had been somewhat reserved, suddenly leaned in close, his voice harsh and biting. Get out, he spat. We're done. You've served your purpose. I stood frozen, my heart racing, but my voice steady.
What do you mean?
Don't play dumb, he sneered. You've been nothing but a stepping stone. Your daddy's money, well, we don't need that anymore.
I've moved on.
I've got someone better, someone hotter. His words were a slap to the face, and before I could respond, Bailey's cruel voice cut in. Honestly, Genesis, we only put up with you because you could pay for the house.
You were too eager to play housewife.
And you fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And the house? I managed to ask, my voice tight with disbelief. Our house, Bailey laughed, her tone venomous. You just paid for it. Elias, with a smug grin, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. Consider these receipts a parting gift. With a triumphant look, he tore the paper to pieces, letting the scraps fall to the floor. But instead of feeling defeated, a calm settled over me. A slow smile spread across my face, one that sent a shiver down their spines. Funny? I asked, my voice dripping with dark amusement. You think those were the real receipts? Their smugness faltered, replaced by confusion and doubt. I leaned in, my voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. They were just copies. The originals are safely with my lawyer. The color drained from Elias's face, Bailey's jaw dropped, and Lincoln looked as if he might collapse from shock. Finally, the tables had turned. I want my money back, I said,
my voice firm and unyielding.
I want every penny of that $350,000, and I want it by tomorrow, or I'll see you in court. Their desperate pleas for forgiveness fell on deaf ears. I was done. I had given them enough chances. Turning on my heel, I walked out of the room, the door slamming behind me with satisfying finality. The next morning, I returned to the house I once called home. Lincoln and Bailey sat on the couch, their faces painted with feigned despair. Even Elias, who had always been so confident, now wore a defeated expression. Genesis, Lincoln began, his voice dripping with false sincerity. We've been talking. I cut him off, raising a hand. Save it, I know exactly what you've been talking about. Their false remorse crumbled into irritation. Bailey dabbed at her non-existent tears with a lace handkerchief,
trying to salvage some semblance of sympathy.
Genesis, honey, she cooed, her voice laced with feigned regret. We were wrong. Can't we just forget all of this and start over? I scoffed. Forget? Forget the lies, the manipulation, forget the way you called me disgusting, and you, Elias. I turned to him, my voice like ice. Don't even try to plead your case. A cheater is a cheater, and I have no interest in sharing my life with a liar. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Their carefully constructed facade crumbled, and in its place, raw desperation appeared. Then, I made my move, a final negotiation that would ensure justice and a taste of sweet satisfaction. Here's the deal, I said, leaning forward. I've got the money you stole, and you're broke. In exchange for the $350,000, you will sign over the ownership of this house to me.